Yeah, that'll somewhere.
That's like much right now.
I see. I need it. Both of them? Yeah. Oh, I don't hear it anymore. Okay,
Right, you don't want to.
all right. Sometimes you just have to shake the right chicken bone at it. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming in and joining us. We're on with some romantic mood lighting here. Nice cool afternoon, you know, keep the lights off so we can all see the screen and hopefully nobody will fall asleep. I am going to come around and kick people who do, so just fair warning there. Thanks for coming in and thanks for being online and joining us this afternoon. We're here with the Water Use Advisory Council. For those who don't know me, I'm Laura Campbell with Michigan Farm Bureau. I'm one of your co-chairs, and I see that one of my other co-chairs is here online, Brian Burrows. Brian Eggers, who is our third co-chair, wasn't able to make it today, sends his regrets, but hopes that the meeting goes well. If there's no objection, let's see, I see that we are still short quorum in person, which is okay, but what we're going to need to do is make a couple of changes to our agenda. Hopefully everybody received that agenda by email. And if you're not on the email list, do be sure and let us know so that we can get you added. But hopefully you have today's agenda. What we will have to do without a quorum for today is we're not going to do an official approval of the agenda or minutes. We can go ahead and see if there are any corrections to be recommended, but we're not going to do an official approval of that. And then also for our new technical advisor application, if there's any questions or people have any comments or anything that needs to be answered, we can have that discussion, but we won't be able to do an official approval of the new technical advisor. So those are the changes that we'll need to make to this committee meeting or this council meeting for today. With that, what I'll do is I'll start by going around the room and asking everybody who's here to announce yourselves. And then we'll ask for, I think what I'll do is, since we no longer have to give locations, I'm just gonna read off folks' names that I see here who are participating. If you're here under someone else's name or you've got someone else in the room, do let us know so that we can make sure that you're recorded for being present online. I don't want to miss anybody. So let's start with roll call in the room.
Doug Needham, Michigan Aggregates Association. Hugh Nicholas, Fulton.
Christine Spitzley, Origin Advisors.
That's Kevin, WWA. That's Margaret.
Gabby Hayes, Michigan Department of Air. Rachel Proctor, Consumers Energy.
Steve Prater, Consumers Energy.
Mike Gallagher, Michigan Lakes and Streams Association.
Christine Alexander, Eagle.
Norma, Eagle.
Chip Middle, Eagle.
All right, thanks. And then let's see, for folks that I see who are here online, Jeremiah Asher, Simon Belial, Margaret Bettenhausen, Brian Burrows, James Clift, Emily Fennell, Frank Wojciech, Grant Poole, Ralph Hefner, Ross Helmer, Clay Dupree, Lee Turner, Mike Frederick, Lena Pappas, Steve Kohler, Sherry Thalen, Tom Frazier, Jay Wesley, Adam Wygant, and Adam Zwickel. Did I miss anybody?
This is Frank Edowagishik. My apologies, number one, for being late. Number two, I was planning on being there in person, but I tested positive for COVID this morning. So
well,
I'm delighted to be in cyberspace with the rest of you.
well, thanks for taking that responsibility, and hopefully you don't get too sick, and hopefully you recover quickly.
Thank you.
Anybody else I missed in the roll call? All right. With that, since we can't do an official approval of the agenda, I'll just ask real quick if there's anything else that anyone needs to add to the agenda to bring up today on an informal basis. And none. Same thing, we're not gonna do an. I'm gonna ask, if folks who aren't speaking can go ahead and microphone. What we'll do is we won't take an official approval of minutes, but if there are, corrections or anything that anyone is aware of that you want to make so that we can go ahead and get those in as written suggestions so that they can be quickly approved when we've got quorum in person again, we'd go ahead and take those.
Is Jamil.
All right, seeing none, what we'll go ahead on and do is call for a public comment period. What we normally do is because we hold 2 comment periods, we'll take one on agenda items right now, and then we'll have another public comment at the end of session for folks to bring things up just in general or anything that's not related to the agenda. So anything agenda related that we need to enter for public comment.
Hey, Laura,
Yes.
this is Dave Hamilton. Just want to let you know I'm here.
I'm sorry, can you say your name again? Dave Hamilton. Oh. All right, Dave, thanks, appreciate that. All right, I'm not seeing any others making public comments. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to legislative and budget updates. And I will ask if there's any folks who have any updates that they need to give or information that they have, movement of legislation or anything that's been happening in the budget sphere since our last meeting in June. James, is this something that you can kind of cover a little bit of? Any new information or news, or Jim, if there's anything that you've got?
Follow James Cliff's lead.
Again, can you ask the question one more time? I'm sorry about.
Sure, just wanted to see if you have any updates from a budget perspective or legislative perspective that the council needs to know about.
Yeah, I mean, we have met multiple times internally on the kind of budget items as far as the allocation of money and looking at all the agenda, the recommendations, and kind of working our way down that list. We've engaged with a number of the council members on ones that we think we're going to have to go out for an RFP for. We've got some such as ag extension where there's existing contracts. So we're exploring whether or not existing contracts can be just amended as opposed to having to go through a whole new contract on some of the items. And then there's been some discussion with the other units on the geological survey money and allocating that. Of course, that is one where there was more of an allocation made, but we're also trying to make sure that as part of kind of moving forward with the geological survey, that we're making sure that we get all the old well logic records kind of into the system. We've got an agreement from DHHS to enter all of the new ones coming in for the next 3 years with some funding that they had. So again, everything's kind of looking kind of positive and kind of rolling along. And I would guess that by kind of the next meeting that we'll have some, kind of real detail as far as exactly kind of where we are in each of those. Remind me again when our next meeting is.
September 13th.
September, okay, so relatively soon. So, I think that would be good timing, and then we can maybe plan at that meeting to kind of go through the kind of the budget information in greater detail at that time.
Okay,
Now, James, we've got our next implementation committee meeting September 1st. Do you think we'll have a little bit of information by then? Because that would help steer us as far as we look at.
Yes. Yeah, I think we'll have, we keep getting more information, keep getting these little bits and pieces, but we can talk to it with the implementation committee on the 1st and then report back to the full council kind of mid-month. I think that's perfect.
One follow-up question. Do we know anything about the Michigan Geological Survey request, or that went in front? We know Yelich spoke in front of the Appropriations Committee. And so we're trying to just kind of figure out where they're going to be getting any additional funding, any movement on that.
Yeah, they were allocated 3 million in next year's budget with a promise, and then you always have to take your promise because legislatures can't bind future legislators, but a promise that it was going to be ongoing funding on a yearly basis. So good news on that front.
yeah, that is good news. Jim, anything ahead?
Nope, just a heads up for the data collection committee chairs. The 2020 report had a recommendation for funding to extend the current USGS stream gauge network out through September 30th, 2024. So water use assessment staff have come up with a proposal for additional new gauges, but in the interim, we need to talk to Ralph and his staff about what their capabilities are and then take a proposal back to the data collection committee.
Okay. I guess one question I would have for that, and I don't know if this is for you to answer or if Ralph can weigh in on this. For that network, is it exclusively for USGS operated and maintained gauges, or are they collecting information from other sources too and putting into that same network? So if there's, a private group or a university or state or NGO who's got a stream gauge, who's collecting that information? Is it USGS in this network?
Hi there, folks. This is Ralph. Yeah, to my knowledge, it was USGS only, but we're always willing to consider furnished record, and that's a record that we call or what we indicate as record that comes from outside sources that are still put in the USGS databases, subject to the quality assurance standards that we set and the state sets also. So, again, my understanding from the recommendations was that it was USGS gauging, but again, we'd be willing to consider it more, again, especially as Jim, as what you stated, that, with our current situation with staffing and ability to gear up for additional gauges, can we do it in the time allotted? And if not, maybe we'll be willing to work with some others to help fulfill those needs.
Okay, thanks. Megan, welcome. For those online, I know the camera's not making it around real quick. We've got Megan Tinsley here as well to complete our roll call. Anything else on legislative or budget updates?
Laura, this is Dave Lush. Can you hear me?
Sure can. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, a question for James. Have any of the recommendations that require RFPs actually have engaged with the contracting entities at DTMB yet?
I am not sure. I thought there may have been some discussions. The one challenge we have kind of internally at Eagle is that our finance people are on overload, given the very generous allocations from the legislature. So kind of dealing with that kind of a bandwidth issue. Again, on each of these, we went down and had kind of internal staff meetings, and we know there's at least a couple of them that are going to require a DTMB conversation. I'm not sure if that's happened or not yet.
There's still short answer to your question, Dave, is that there still needs to be further internal discussions with the procurement staff, so the staff that are administering the RFPs and writing the grant agreements know the procedures that we need to follow. So we're in the process of getting instructions.
Okay, well, just once again, volunteering for the recommendations that I authored to help in any way I can to move that forward.
Now, you're on the list. I'm sure we'll be kind of reaching out to you, hopefully relatively soon here.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
I guess to follow up from that, James and Jim, is there anything that you guys need or help that any of the council members can provide to you while we're working through this process?
I can think of at the moment.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks. Appreciate that. If everybody's ready, we'll go ahead and move on to our next agenda item. Water Use Advisory Council member terms. So if everybody who remembers from the legislation that was passed in 2018, council member terms can be renewed, but they expire after 4 years. And so those who were appointed by the Senate Majority Leader, the Speaker of the House, Governor, and the Director are going to need to make sure that you're contacting those folks. And if it's not you who's going to be taking this next term for Water Use Advisory Council members, that kind of working with them to make sure that they've got the information they need for who they should be appointing. And obviously these meetings are open to anybody who wants to attend, but we want to make sure that we're complying with the statute in terms of listed voting membership of the council, as well as ex officio positions. Any questions about that?
Hey, Laura, could we get the staff contacts for those three? That would be helpful.
Sure.
Thank you.
We can send out the list of kind of who's appointed by who as well to hopefully facilitate everybody's contacts.
Thank you.
Laura, this is Dave Hamilton. It's not clear to me exactly. It's not exactly clear to me when the appointments end. If the law passed 4 years ago, there's a certain time for appointments to occur, like 60 days. They did not. And I can't remember when the appointments actually did occur, but would it be 4 years from the actual appointment?
Well, the effective date, this is Jim Mill. The effective date of the statute amendments was 12/28/2018. And the statute directed that those appointments be made within 60 days, which would be end of February 2019. So if those appointments were made in a timely manner, then between the end of December and the end of February 2023 is when they need to get it out.
Yeah, they were not made in a timely manner. I can't remember exactly when they were made. I think it might have been as late as the summer.
That's a good question, Dave, and I don't have the answer for you, but I will do what I can to find out. I think probably for safety, we should probably move forward right now with the understanding that they're all going to roll over at the same time, but I'll get clarification that if there were folks whose appointments weren't made until later, whether that also extends their term.
Thank you.
And this is Frank Edowagishik. Did I hear you correctly that you're going to send out contact information for those people who were appointed so that we know how to follow up on this?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep, I've got a note to get that out to you guys.
So just a point of question though, that, Senate Majority Leaders, Speaker of the House, they're going to be probably different people starting in 2023.
Starting in January.
So if our term isn't up, the existing ones that appointed can extend.
Yes, because
4 years.
That's my understanding, is whoever is currently Speaker, Majority Leader, Governor is going to appoint for the next 4 years. unless anybody has a different understanding.
Well, I think that's
great.
where the effective date is important because, as Jim said, exactly it was 60 days after, but that did not occur. And Governor Whitmer made the appointments for governor, and the leaders in 2019 are actually the ones that appointed people at that point.
Mhm. Okay. Yep, that's a good question. So I will make sure to follow up on that.
I believe that the letter I received about the appointment specified the date that my term ended. Because I checked that earlier in the year and was disappointed to find out how far away it was. It was a long drive.
I'm making a note on that too, to follow up and find out for sure. And I may not get it out in the same email as we get the contact information out to you, because I want to get that out as soon as possible, but I will do my best to find out quickly. All right, other questions, comments, concerns? All right. Moving on, again, because we don't quite have in-person quorum here today, we won't be able to take an official vote on a new technical advisor who's supplied an application. But hopefully you guys received and were able to take a quick look at the application letter and CV for a technical advisor who would like to kind of officially be an advisor for the council. That's Dr. Young Suk Dong with MSU. And like I said, we can't take an official vote on it today, but if anybody's got questions or things that Dr. Dong can respond to, or questions for the council members, we can go ahead and take those and make sure that while Dr. Dong is more than welcome to attend any of the council meetings, any of the work group meetings or subcommittees, that will make the official decision on technical advisor position once we have that quorum.
Yeah, Megan and I, is this something that the Water Use Advisory Council has had before?
Yep.
Okay. Do we have one currently?
Yes, yeah. So Todd Feenstra is a technical advisor. Who else is officially technical advisor? Jeremiah, are you one? Joel's one.
Yes, I'm one.
Yep. So Jeremiah is officially one. So yeah, so we've done it. It doesn't come up real often, but we've had a few who have asked to be technical advisors, and it's a pretty straightforward manner. Let us know why you want to be an advisor to the council, provide us with, a resume or CV, and then the council can review it. It's sent first to the executive committee, and then it's brought to the whole council, and we take a vote once we're here.
Laura, this is Dave Lush. I'm also a technical advisor.
Good. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate that. All right. If there's no other questions or anything else that anybody needs to bring up in terms of these agenda items, what I'm going to do at this time is, Brian, if you're ready to take over and your internet connection is behaving, I'll turn the agenda over to you to lead us through the rest of it.
Okay, can everybody hear my my voice well enough?
Yeah.
Yep.
Seemingly. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. We're at the committee chair report, so we'll dive in. And the first up is the data committee. I'll be brief this time. We do not have a lot to report on since the last meeting that we had. The work in front of us, obviously, at this point is to have a discussion about what we can accomplish for the report. Whether we'll be able to, over the next month or two, bring things to fruition for a report and recommendations. I have a pretty good feeling that we can, to some degree, on one of our topics, and may not be able to bring another one to close. We will, of course, still continue working to figure out when it's time to work on implementing some of the past recommendations that were funded. And sounds like Jim's at least got our first one queued up with the USGS stream gauge network. It's probably speculation, but I think we will probably work pretty hard to see what we can do for recommendations on the inland lake issue. I wouldn't expect if we do that it's anything completely transformative. We won't propose an entirely new framework for your adoption or anything dramatic like that. But I think we have gotten to the point where we may have some next steps that we'd like to take that we can put into a recommendation form. But really not much to report since our last meeting. Megan, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, thanks, Brian. I was just going to say we haven't met since the last time we were here, so.
Yeah. Any other participants in our committee that think I might have missed something worth mentioning? Okay. All right, that's it for the.
Just a quick question, Brian, just for those of us keeping score. We're gonna have to make sure that we include all the recommendations. Do you guys think you're most likely gonna have one, maybe two recommendations for the report?
Probably at most. So part of the work that we have needed to work on is really wouldn't necessarily, well, okay. So we have been struggling to get through what we would call the like an audit or a review of all data collection and data use protocols for the program. And because of that, we're not likely to discover or to recommend, put recommendations in on that subject. Maybe we rally and do, and that wouldn't be like a big transformative change, but there's a possibility in the future we may recommend, some kind of protocols. That one we've had a hard time kind of as a group getting all of the details of that out on paper to dig in. We have spent quite a bit of time talking about inland lakes, and we remain at a place where we're probably many steps from really getting to like, what I would call like a true recommendation as far as a new system or a way to approach the problem. But what I think that we may be close enough on is identifying a couple of tools or resources that we need for targeted like investigation or technical work. And so if the group comes up with something, it would probably be like a recommendation for a targeted investment to help us move from kind of the starting blocks out to step 1 or 2 on that issue. So that's probably if you see something, but again, for anybody who's on the committee, that's me speculating out a little bit past committee discussions, but I think that that's what I would anticipate if we come forth with some recommendations.
Thanks, that's helpful.
Okay. Committee, I see Dave Hamilton and Jim are both around, so.
I'll take care of it, Brian. Thank you. And then Dave can fill in anything that needs to be filled in after I do that. You may remember that one of the tasks we were given was to provide feedback to the department, to Eagle, on Aquaculture performance test guidelines. So a while ago, I think it was pre-COVID because we met in person, I convened a group of about, I will say 8 to 10 consultants who work in this arena of doing Aquaculture tests for the water withdrawal assessment process. And we were joined by 3 staff members from Eagle that worked for Jim. And then it we provided that feedback to Eagle. I kind of summarized it in a short document. And then the models committee and Eagle were dealing with other stuff for a while, and we just really didn't get back to it until I think probably this winter. And the manner in which we did that was that Dave Hamilton and I, together with Jim Milne and Lena Pappas, reviewed that document, a few drafts of that document, until we got to the point very recently, like within the last couple of weeks, where the four of us are in agreement that we have a good document that we should pass on to the models committee for their input and feedback and comments. So we're going to do that. We don't have a models committee meeting scheduled that I know of right now. But when that is scheduled, we will let everyone know when that meeting is going to be. We'll make sure that the draft Aquaculture performance test guidelines are distributed well in advance of that meeting and encourage participation by those who have already been participating, even though it was a couple of years ago, and anyone else who wants to. So that's all I have. Dave, do you want to add anything to that, or Jim?
No, it sounds good.
Any questions?
Not seeing any. And I don't see any online. Okay, thank you very much. New topics. Will you present that today, Pat?
Sure. We didn't meet since the last meeting. The last two topics we talked about have been kind of either taken up by another committee or like Jeremiah Asher's presentation was before this whole group. The one thing I do have a question on, and if Emily's on, maybe she can answer this. There's those FAQs that we talked about with the committee that Eagle has developed. Maybe Jim's got the answer on that. I thought it was a great document, and we gave it a review with some minor comments, and I'd love to see that out. If I don't want it to just collect dust. So if it needs more review, be happy to I'll look at that. But that was kind of dealing with Michigan water law and FAQs, and I thought it had some good information. Does anybody know where that's at?
So
Emily,
Pat,
you,
yeah, I can just jump in. So we just talked about this again, Jim and I and Andy last week, and my understanding is that the Water Use Program and Ryan Blazik, who's the Water Use Program Outreach Coordinator, is working with the program to help put that together with some other FAQs that will then go up on the Water Use Program website. And then I think we'll also link to those from OGL's page. So I think there's been a little bit of delay just because we had a major website migration, and our office has been working with the Water Use Program to figure out our new content for the page and what that's going to look like. So Jim, I don't know if you want to add anything more.
just, I think we've got a deadline to respond back to Ryan by the end of August for filing FAQs, so Carl. Okay, sooner.
And then I would
Process of rounding up FAQs. There's the Water User Committee, water law FAQs that Pat was mentioning. There's some other more general water use type FAQs. The couple different versions I've seen out there. So I'm not sure whether that's going to end up into one big FAQ document or separate or what.
It would be better separate.
We'll find out.
When they meet prime time, could you distribute it to us? I'd like to have that available.
Sure. Yeah, and they'll go out on, should go out on the webpage as well, but we'll get them back out to the council.
Perfect.
And Pat, just so you're aware, I did share the FAQ document earlier this spring with Dr. Adam Zwickel as part of the Water User Committee Integrated Assessment Project. So his team has has that information for their work.
Perfect. That sounds good. And then we did talk about taking up, preventative measures, but given that we've got a report due by the end of the year, I think we'll kick that one down the road a little bit. So that's all I had.
Fantastic. Anybody have any questions? All right, not seeing any. Okay, let's move on. We both have Kelly and Emily here. Would one of you like to give an update for the Conservation and Efficiency Committee?
Kelly, you want me to go ahead and I can take the lead and then you can add anything I may have missed? Kelly and I are like ships passing, so we have not been at a meeting together in about 2 months. So hopefully our schedules will start to align. But the Water Conservation Efficiency Committee is continuing to meet monthly on the first Thursday at 9 a.m. So anyone is welcome to attend those meetings, and we do take meeting minutes and share those out with the committee. We are continuing a lot of work on the 2020 recommendations and looking at ways to take advantage of some of the new funding. The recommendation that was fairly broad that actually called for creating this standing committee. There's a lot of things happening, I think, within this broad recommendation, looking at ways that we can advance water conservation through our climate, energy, and water infrastructure programs. The specific aspect of this that we think we could utilize the $50,000 that was recommended in the 2020 report would be to co-fund that through the Office of the Great Lakes and match an additional $50,000 and actually take a look at Michigan's water sector best management practices with a focus on how climate change may be impacting those practices and changing their business practices, and how they're thinking about potential future impacts from climate migration and climate change. We're also looking at doing a slightly larger project, so it would include that aspect and working with PAT, the American Waterworks Association, and then the Chamber on some of the already approved voluntary best practices. But the other aspect that we're looking at through this project would be to review the other Great Lakes states water sector, water conservation efficiency best practices, and see if there's any innovative approaches or technological advancements that are happening in the region, and then look at some other exemplar programs across the country. So I'm trying to make this a little more forward-looking versus just looking back at our existing voluntary water conservation best management practices. So as funding decisions are made internally in terms of how that $10 million will be allocated, we plan to work with Pat and Michael Amo and the committee and the WUAC to put together that request for proposals and hopefully be able to issue something by the end of the calendar year or beginning of 2023. So we're ready to move on that. I guess I'll save this for the next slide, but it's sort of related to this. Sorry, go back. So one other update I wanted to provide to the WUAC today, which relates to a finding in the Dow Fellows report, but also the 2014 Water Use Advisory Council report. And that was the recommendation to create a Great Lakes Education and Outreach Program on water stewardship. So the Office of the Great Lakes has formed an interagency work group of a number of state agencies that have been working over the last couple of months to put together a request for proposals to actually fund the development of this Great Lakes Education Outreach Program on water stewardship through the Michigan Great Lakes Protection Fund. So we have a draft RFP that is going to start the internal review process. And we're planning on putting out that RFP hopefully in September of this year for about $300,000 through the Michigan Great Lakes Protection Fund. And this is envisioned to be integrating Great Lakes literacy principles that have been established and are part of our other programs like the From Students to Stewards initiative. But
Seth,
also
do you have the well log for the Uman Cox well?
I think Todd needs to mute. So we're excited about this effort, and this we expect to be probably a 2-year project with a grant starting at the beginning of the calendar year next year. So helping to move forward the WUAC recommendations from 2014, some things from the Dow Fellows report, and then the Michigan Water Strategy. The next recommendation, we're continuing to advance progress on recommendation 2 related to ag efficiency. And again, we're just waiting for final decisions internally on how those funds will be allocated, and provided a number of mechanisms to help move those dollars if that funding will be available for the MSU extension for ag efficiency program. So we have been working over the last couple months on 2022 recommendations. Thanks to the WUEC co-chairs for giving us some feedback on the pilot program for ag irrigation efficiency program. We had some further discussion with our committee last week, and there's some additional revisions that we're going to bring back to the partners for that recommendation that need to be made. So we're expecting to put forward probably one recommendation from our committee for the WUEC's consideration, and we're hoping to be able to have that revised recommendation for the September meeting. I say September. Do we have a September meeting? We do. Okay. And then we got some suggestions from some of the WUEC co-chairs to take a look at the potential for creating best management practices for water conservation for the aquaculture industry. So we've been doing some research and having conversations with the Michigan Aquaculture Association about their interest. And I think they're in a similar, they were interested, but I think they're in similar situations to our other sectors, and that they would need some administrative support and a facilitated process to help them create something like that. So what we're envisioning is that as part of that co-funded project, where we'd be looking at all of Michigan's water sectors, that we could also do an inventory of Michigan's aquaculture industry on what their current practices are, and then gather information from the Great Lakes region and other places across the country that would be relevant to Michigan's context. And that it's probably going to be more of like a phase 2 project with some additional funding to actually facilitate creating best management practices for the Aquaculture Association in Michigan. And it's a little bit further out since would be entirely new for them. We also felt like as a committee too, in this work, we didn't want to sort of single them out and make them sort of feel like they were being targeted for some type of new program. So we think kind of coming alongside and incorporating them in this larger look at all of our best management practices for water conservation efficiency makes more sense. So those are the committee updates. We'll be continuing to meet monthly. Kelly, is there anything that I missed that you want to add? Oh, we can't hear you. We can't hear you, Kelly. We can read your lips though now.
Maybe for better or for worse,
Right.
being able to read lips.
I'm not sure if she's putting something in the chat. Yeah. Is there anything else that I missed that any of the other committee members want to add?
Emily, I just wanted to let you know I do have approval from this Michigan Section Board, put together a task force to update the guidelines for the public water supply. So I'm going to try, I'll miss the next meeting because we have our annual conference, and I'll be recruiting for members, driving members at that conference. And hopefully we could get that completed by, I think, the spring board meeting for the Michigan section. This is probably a reasonable goal. Winter would be kind of tough, but we may be able to make it better.
Oh, that would be fantastic. So I need to circle back with you and Mike. I'm hoping to reach back out and try to get a meeting scheduled for us to sit down with Kelly and kind of pick back up from where we were in our conversation in June, and we can hear more about what your plans are. So that's fantastic news. Glad to hear it's going to move forward.
So Emily, this is really great work. It sounds like you'll have a lot to report as far as things that you've been able to implement and are working to implement actively. And then we can expect over the coming weeks at least one recommendation.
That's correct.
Okay. Fantastic. Anybody else have any questions?
Kelly and Emily, I guess I'll just throw out there if there's any assistance that you guys need in terms of working with the Aquaculture Association. We're glad to help out wherever we can. We a lot of them are Farm Bureau members and meet with us pretty regularly on other topics. So if there's ways that we can help to either provide logistics or provide meeting spaces or resources for you guys to work with them, just let us know.
Thanks, Laura. That's awesome. We'll keep that in mind as we move forward. All those resources, I'm sure, will be very appreciated.
Okay. Thank you very much. Great update. Okay. Next, and I guess last committee update for today is the implementation committee. And Laura, you have your name here, I think, at least on the slide, but I know that you and Doug usually partner up on this. Go ahead.
Yeah. Doug, you wanna, well, you kind of already,
Right.
Let go of the thunder for our next meeting.
Yeah, we do not really have anything to report. We have not met since we met back in June, but we do have a meeting scheduled September 1st, 9 to 11. It is Zoom. So hopefully, I know not all that participated in the doodle poll could participate, but hopefully we get good representation. And really, we're going to discuss really what steps we can move forward. So hopefully by then we'll be able to learn a little bit more from Eagle as far as what contracts can be extended, what projects, recommendations we have to do RFPs, and we can start getting those in the works and getting some movement.
Yeah, Chris.
It's September 1st from,
9 to 11.
I had 9 to 12.
Oh,
Oh.
9 to 11.
No, hopefully we don't last 9 to 12. That's a long time to talk about numbers. But yeah, I would say, and anybody who is in the council or who's been participating and is interested in implementation of the 2020 recommendations and and whatever we can glean out of the budget process, please, you are welcome to attend, because we want to make sure that we're doing our best to represent the recommendations that everybody put forward, and to make sure that we get as much of that done as we can.
Right, can you hear me now?
really be-
Because I am really hoping that would be the case.
Yes, we can hear you, Kelly.
Okay, yay! I was sorry. I thought I muted myself for this test. Sorry.
That's all right. Go ahead. We got you.
So I just wanted to say that I had a really great, probably hour plus long conversation with Dan Vogler from the Michigan Aquaculture Association. And at first, I think skittish might be the best term to use. But as we kind of talked about looking at other water sectors and creating best management practices, some documents, and looking forward in time, he kind of came around and he was like, yeah, I don't see why we wouldn't do that. It really seems like, he's like, no one's ever asked us before, and so we would be on board with it. But definitely the bandwidth issue was something that he was concerned about. So that dovetails right into what Emily was saying about the other sectors and really looking for some sort of facilitation that we could help them with. So that's all I had to add. Probably not worth all of that trouble we just went through, but I appreciate you guys listening.
Thanks, Kelly. I guess just to continue on in the vein with what the implementation committee is working on, please do come, because like I said, we want to be very, very inclusive and make sure that we are doing a good job representing everybody's needs as we start working through this. The other request that I'll put out, and this is kind of why I've been bugging people about, oh, what recommendations and how many and what are you putting forward, is I'm starting to think through the organization of our 2022 report, so I can start putting together some of the quick and dirty stuff about it and make sure that we're getting everything that's needed. The reports that everybody's been providing through these subcommittees have been awesome, and you guys have been doing a lot of really great work. And so one of the things I want to make sure and capture is even if they, even beyond just here's how we're, thanks for the money, here's how we're spending it. And then what do we recommend for 2022 is if, I want to make sure and try to capture as much as possible of the work that you guys have been doing in all of the subcommittees. Whether it's, like Brian was talking about auditing the different data collection programs, or, or like Kelly and Emily were talking about, working through, the different grants that have been implemented and, and things that have been happening on that end. So if there's stuff that hasn't made it to the minutes from our meetings, or stuff that you guys have been working on, write-ups, white papers, notes, that kind of thing that you want to make sure is included in that 2022 report, so that we can really capture a good picture of what we've been doing, do make sure to send that to me, because probably after our September meeting, when we've kind of got more of these recommendations out and in front of us, I'm gonna start putting draft materials together so that we can really start digging into those, and everybody can get out their red editing pens.
I just wanted to say, and you probably saw it, the proposals maybe reflected, but the meeting is at the same time as water conservation.
Good, yeah, that was the response that came back, yeah.
Laura, could you talk a little bit more about how you want this laid out, this report? Because I'm trying to remember now without having it in front of me, didn't we not do it by committees last time because we wanted to have a cohesive voice?
Correct. So last time, as you guys will remember, we sort of organized the recommendations into buckets of more subject material than rather than strict subcommittees, and depending on what those recommendations end up looking like, as we've got our complete list from this year, we'll kind of take a look at what makes the most sense and how to group those, because again, we're not trying to put like favorite children in a certain place. Everybody's ideas that they have for recommendations are our favorite children. What we want to do is we want to organize it in a way that the legislators understand, and that can help them to get quickly up to speed with what it is this council's trying to do. So the main division point, or the main kind of organizing point I've got so far in mind, is really just, it's going to be kind of a two-part report in the sense of, here's what happened in 2020. You guys gave us money. Thanks a lot. Here's what we've done so far, either to implement those funding pieces, or the continuing work that the committees have been doing on the 2020 recommendations. And then here's new recommendations for 2022. And maybe that'll end up getting reversed, just so that we can prioritize, hey, here's our new ask. But that's kind of the two parts of that report. And so if it works for you, kind of the way we did it for the 2020 report was really the implementation committee kind of took a first stab at it. We pulled a rough draft together. We sent it out to council members, let you guys attack it with your red pens, which is very helpful. So please do that. And then sort of cleaned up the draft and got it to where the language was where everybody wanted it, and got it to you so that you can work your formatting and make it pretty magic, and add in cool pictures and that kind of stuff, so that we've got a good report that, everybody in the council is proud of.
So I have a question just to clarify. This is good, and you guys did a seamless transition into agenda item number 10, so this is perfect. I just want to make sure. So what I'm hearing is what we'll need from each committee is a written description of the things that we've been doing to implement past recommendations, kind of a write-up, what have we been doing for work on implementation. And then if that kind of a write-up probably just needs to be vetted and, get good consensus within each of the relevant committees that it comes from. And then that would be passed forward, really just a description of what we're doing. But then you'll also need any recommendations, new recommendations that a committee comes with, needs to be vetted, worked out within the committee, and then put forth on our agenda so that we can put them in September, October, maybe November if need be. And then if approved by this whole the whole body, then that would be transferred into the report as well. So in that sense, even if you don't have new recommendations, each committee should really be writing up what it's done to implement, as well as kind of working to bring the recommendations to fruition for discussion and voting. Does that sound right?
Sure, and I guess the only thing I would add to that is people don't have to feel like you've got to reinvent the wheel. If you already gave a report and it's in the minutes, you don't have to send it to me again. I'm going to go back through the minutes from our past meetings and grab anything that anybody's reported on in terms of activity. So, you know, I don't want to make people do a bunch of busy work that they already reported on. But if there's additional detail, if there's if there's stuff that you feel like would help to make that easier to understand, you know, or stuff that you guys have already written up, or, you know, or for instance, hey, here's documents, you know, like the FAQs that we came up with. Those would be good things to make sure to send to me so that I've got them in their complete and finalized form. And then obviously weigh in on the draft materials as we start to put them together so that we can make sure that the work that you guys have been doing is captured correctly.
Okay, so it seems to me that the first priority is obviously if any committee does have new recommendations, that's priority, you know, and urgency number one at this point is to kind of bring those to fruition, get them written, decided at least within a committee so that they can be presented sort of for information 1 month, whether that be in September or October with our whole committee here. And then because there's going to be a, you know, probably a time delay, right? We're going to try to get those out, get everybody here time to review them, discuss them, and then we'll probably wait another month to kind of take action and vote on them. That's the greatest urgency right now. But then, you know, as soon as that's through, a committee kind of working to make sure it pulls together its implementation and make sure it kind of gets that over in some way, shape, or form would be good time filling once recommendations are in the queue. Does that sound right? And then it sounds like you guys have graciously sort of raised your hand to help us pull it all together and to massage the writing and make sure we don't miss stuff that was in minutes.
Yep, that's the plan. I was going to say something, now I lost it.
You were going to say, you know, because your working group is being so gracious in quarterbacking the writing, that your request in return for that is to not be given everything the first time in the end of November?
Yes, that. I just remembered it. It seemed to me, and people speak up if you feel differently, but it seemed to me like it worked pretty well, that a lot of sort of the drafting, you know, like once you guys all get a copy of the draft, that sending me corrections, sending edits, that kind of thing worked pretty well, just going back and forth by email. Obviously I'd want to collate those and have our committee kind of go through them and make sure we've got everything so that everybody can see a clean copy of it, you know, so that they know what changes were made. But if that worked well for everybody last time, I think that would be a good way to do it again this time. So once you guys get a draft, just start sending me stuff. And we'll be making those corrections and making sure that you're happy with that language, so that then everything can be in there. And we can move quickly with getting that final draft out for everybody to look over and make any last changes to.
Perfect. Does anybody have any questions on the report logistics?
Laura, do you want to give any hard dates, first draft, second draft, when you're, not maybe right this minute, but think about what the review schedule will look like so you can get it on the calendars? Or you just can graciously agree for all? Which will be on you, so.
What I would like to do is since I know we've got a couple potential recommendations coming in September, I'd like to try to get some rough materials pulled together after that meeting, and then hopefully by the beginning of October have a super rough draft for people to look at. So that it's out and available before our October meeting. That's my goal.
Okay. if I remember last time, by the November one, ideally the agenda for a November meeting would be to, if need be, do any sort of last voting on recommendations that were discussed in October, and then to do some final collective wordsmithing and buy-in on the final language of the report.
Yep, and and if there are any recommendations or edits to those recommendations that cause heartache, to make sure that we have time set aside for that discussion and can get that resolved by the end of the November meeting. So that December is just party time and, oh, we forgot a period here, or, we need a better, I don't know, paragraph starter there.
Well, given the fact that in September, we're gonna hopefully be beginning some of this process on the 2022 recommendations, that section of this report, I think, is gonna be ongoing all the way up to the minute that we cut it off to say this is what's in the report. So.
All right. I'm not seeing, let me change my screen for a second. It's a little blurry. Are there hands raised inside the room? I'm not seeing any. Okay. And I don't see any hands raised online. So let's go ahead and we'll move on to the next agenda item, number 11, with an Eagle update. And Jim, are you going to lead that?
Okay, thanks, Brian. Good afternoon, everyone. And this is the program update for Eagle's water use program. I'm going to share some updated program metrics. And then I'm going to show a map of the current status of depleted water management areas, and indicate on the map where Eagle has been or plans on going out to collect additional stream flow measurements. I'm also going to give you an update on the lean process improvement project for the Eagle groundwater data warehouse that Andy first told you about at the previous meeting in June, and then I'll answer any questions. So the highlights from the annual legislative report for Part 327 will be presented at the September meeting, because we want to allow for some additional time for internal agency review within Eagle. Dave Hamilton had requested that the program metrics be presented on a calendar year basis instead of the traditional July to July program year that would allow for greater comparison over the entire irrigation season. We're going to continue to present calendar. We have the first council meeting in 2023, then we can give you the update for all of 2022. Our compliance numbers for January through July, 103 compliance communications have been sent out. That includes 10 after the fact registrations, where an ATF registrations when we come across a previously unregistered withdrawal, but there was enough stream flow available to authorize a registration for that withdrawal. We sent out 9 missing pump information requests. So if we come across a well log that doesn't have any information about the pump capacity. 81 revised registrations where the withdrawal was put into operation and or operated differently than what was authorized, either by the water withdrawal assessment tool or by the site specific review. If there's enough stream flow available to authorize the as-built as operated, we go ahead and send out a revised registration. And then we have sent out 3 what we call installation verification requests. So if we're unable to verify whether registered withdrawal was in fact put into operation, we'll contact the property owner and ask them for verification. Did the withdrawal get put into operation or not? 11 first violation notices, and we received 4 complaints during this period. And is there anything else you want to add? So our year-to-date metrics for pre-screening reviews, which are the equivalent of a site-specific review, but for a proposed public water supply, 12 of those were passed, 5 of them in Zone A, 5 Zone B, and 1 in Zone C. We didn't have any baseline capacity replacements for public water supplies. 0 denials of pre-screening reviews, and 1 pre-screening review was retracted by the applicant. And during that same period, we've issued 6 Part 327 permits. A permit is required under 327 for any new or increased withdrawal over 2 million gallons a day. So like I said, we issued 6 of those during the first 7 months of the year. During that same period.
Hey, Jim?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. On that, the one in the Zone C, you said it was the municipal one. Did they have to implement water conservation measures then to get that approval? I was just curious. But that was a condition of I thought that was where water conservation kind of comes into the act.
It's a requirement in Part 327. I'll have to look at the Safe Drinking Water Act.
Not trying to get anybody in trouble. I just,
No.
I thought if they did, it may be a source.
That's a
for that
good,
update.
that's an excellent question. I'll have to reread that part of the Safe Drinking Water Act and get back to you.
If you could give me a contact if it's appropriate, if that municipality was involved with that, I'd like to follow up with them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jim, Andy LeBaron is online and raised his hand.
Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, all right. I was just gonna follow up that that it is similarly in the Safe Drinking Water Act. It is a requirement for a community supply if it's been authorized as a Zone C withdrawal, that they shall certify it's implementing applicable environmentally sound and economically feasible water conservation measures. The same old story there. Yeah, it's still that same. If you're familiar with the language in Part 327, that is, it's still that same sort of strange requirement where they just certify they're in compliance with the conservation measures that they deem to be reasonable, more or less. And that process, as far as the certification and so forth, it would be spearheaded, or that'd be organized, coordinated by the Drinking Water Environmental Health Division in the approval and issuance of the Safe Drinking Water Act permit. So I don't know where Drinking Water Environmental Health Division might be with that. In that process, the Safe Drinking Water Act permits, they operate on a sort of a completely different time scale than what we're used to in Part 327. But yes, short answer to the question, yep, that's very good, Pat. You're exactly right. That is a requirement for Zone C withdrawals for the community supplies as well.
Thanks for that clarification, Andy. Pat, I'll touch base with Ned Schuff and Sarah Pearson in Drinking Water and have them follow up with you about which public water supply we're talking about.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, so during that same period, January through July, the online water withdrawal assessment tool, 224 authorizations, and another 88 were authorized through the site-specific review. And of those, 88 authorized, we had 6 denials, 10 that were retracted, and 11 are still pending as of the date of this report. Our timeliness metrics right now, January through July, average number of business days of 11.5, and 53% of the SSRs were completed within the 10 business days. And the top graph shows the overall trend for the average number of business days from receipt to the SSR decision. And the bottom is the percent done within the 10 business days. Now, be aware that the time frame along the bottom of the graph, along the x-axis, until recently was program year to program year. So July 9th 2021, for example, through July 8th, 2022 is the program, most recent program year. And now per request, we're going to a calendar year basis, but looking back at previous years, those were all done as July to July. This table lists the water management areas that are currently in Zone D. The second column there, type, that's the stream temperature classification. And note that the stream temperature classification has varying percentages of how much of the index flow can be removed. So how much of that 50% summer low flow value is available for use. That varies. On the low end of cold transitional stream only has 4% available for use, up to 24% for a warm stream. The third column from the left is the index flow in gallons per minute. Second column from the right is the allowable depletions, and the far column on the right-hand side is the current depletion state. So worst at the top going down. And you're probably wondering where some of those areas are at. So this map shows the location of those depleted water management areas as of August 2nd. And the legends indicate, okay, what follow-up actions is Eagle doing or going to do? So up here in Misaki, we've been collecting miscellaneous stream flow measurements. That's, when I say miscellaneous stream flow measurement, that's going on doing one-time grab sample of the stream flow as opposed to having a continuous stream gauge. Over here in Oceana, Muskegon, again, collecting stream flow. Over in Montcalm, we're reviewing the depletions. Gratiot, Saginaw area, collecting stream flow measurements. We have a watershed management area here in eastern Ottawa County that we're reviewing the status, and we'll be collecting additional stream flow measurements. Same thing down here in Elgin. Over here in Calhoun County, this Dickinson Creek watershed, we've currently got a groundwater model submitted by Todd, and we're reviewing that data in the groundwater model. In addition, USGS is in the process of developing a regional groundwater model for all Calhoun counties, so stay tuned on all of that. We're collecting stream flow measurements down here in St. Joe and Branch County. In the Prairie River watershed, the headwaters 20781, we're addressing. It's in Zone D, pending bringing violations back into compliance. So accurate assessment there, Hannah?
I think it's Zone C right now, but there's so many violations in that watershed that if we authorized all of them, they would be in Zone D. In the stream classification for that one.
Yep, and that should also be noted that DNR Fisheries has proposed changing the stream temperature classification for that water management area 20781, the headwaters of the Prairie River, from a warm stream to a cold transitional, which would make it even less stream flow available than what is currently available.
It would definitely put it in the negative.
So over here on the eastern end of Branch County, reviewing depletions, collecting stream flow measurements in northwest Hillsdale. Geology review going on down here in Monroe. And then on the Monroe Wayne line, again, miscellaneous flow measurements. So we've got a joint funding agreement with US Geological Surveys. So they have staff to go out and collect miscellaneous stream flow measurements. In addition, Eagle goes out and we do some of our own miscellaneous stream flow measurements. We also have USGS has installed and is operating a number of stream gauges around the state to collect continuous flow measurements. Jim, you have a question?
Yes, I'm wondering, like what happens when the stream classification changes and there's already approved withdrawals?
There is a rebuttable presumption in part 327 in the statute that if withdrawal was previously authorized either by the water withdrawal assessment tool or by a site-specific review, that the presumption is that that withdrawal will not cause an adverse resource impact. Then Eagle would have to rebut that presumption through a preponderance of evidence, meaning the more likely than not. So over 50% likely that they are going to cause an adverse resource impact.
Buddy's got a question as well.
Go ahead, buddy.
I was just kind of curious, because I have personal interest in it. The Dickinson Creek model that Todd submitted, how are you guys commenting on that model? Is it looking like close or a long way off?
It's in the queue for Lena to review. Lena, if you're online, do you have any status update?
Not at this time. I'm reviewing additional models that came in ahead of the Dickinson Creek model. So those ones, once they're finished, then the this next one will be in line to be reviewed.
It should be noted that in addition to part 327 modeling, Lena is doing groundwater model reviews in support of resource permit applications, which are subject to part 13 deadlines. So those often take precedence because of the permit deadlines. So we get to, in the case of Dickinson Creek, that's a groundwater model where there is not a pending site-specific review at the moment. It's an additional data collection. So we work it in.
Thank you.
Pending or denied? Yeah, they were denied, and then the groundwater modeling and additional data collection was following up to those SSR denials. So we will get to them when we can, but part 13 deadlines are pretty tight, and we have to do those first.
Jim, what's the process for DNR to propose changing the classification of the stream, and what information either have they provided you guys, or have they said what they're going to provide?
Well, DNR Fisheries has made at least two presentations to the council on their current procedure.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, they sent over their stream temperature and fish population data to Water Resources Division. We had our aquatic biologists in their surface water assessment section review that and concurred with DNR's recommendation. So now I believe, and if there's is Jay Wesley on?
I am. So there's a couple things.
Yeah, can you talk about next steps?
Sure. First, there's a couple things I can send the council. We do have an approved policy for internal DNR fisheries on how we go about making a recommendation for a stream temperature change. So I can send that to the council just to refresh your memory on that. And then this part two, we're trying to carefully stepping through what the process will be in terms of next steps, because it's not real clear in current statute, because in there it stated that it would go to the Natural Resource Commission, and since then they lost that authority to make that decision. So we're trying to figure out what the true process should be, what the public process should be, and can bring that information back to a future meeting if desired.
I have a follow-up question, and we can do it afterwards too. But Jay, you just mentioned that the NRC lost that authority, but the part about the NRC approving kind of a stream temperature or index flow in this statute was kind of an explicit structural check in this statute. It wasn't really kind of by auspice of any other sort of normal authorities of the NRC. I kind of remember it was a little messy when we drafted it, but the purpose of that was simply that the NRC kind of in state government had the best transparent mechanism with the NRC kind of posting things, 2 months in a row, people being able to see it. That's why it was put there. It seems to me, not being a lawyer, obviously, but it seems that because this wasn't really in reference to any authority that they had, but really was explicitly created in this statute, that they would still hang on to that. And I know it's out of the realm of, fishing regulations or, hunting regulations, but do you have any comments or other findings that you've had that have led you to maybe veer away from the NRC?
No, I think I personally agree with you that the intent with that was that there was going to be a public process. And the NRC at the time stood out to be the best process. We just have to figure it out internally with our legal affairs staff, if that's the best approach that now. And just haven't got to that conclusion yet.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yep.
Buddy, did you have another question or is your hand just still up?
Oops, my hand's just still up. Sorry.
That's okay. Just want to make sure not to miss you.
All right, go ahead. Jim, go ahead and why don't you push on through and then we'll take some more questions when you're done.
Okay. All right, well, last month, Andy gave you a brief teaser about the Eagle groundwater data warehouse lean process improvement. I'll give you an update on that. So the lean process improvement was held and it resulted in 5 recommendations. First of which, the standards need to be created for data input, including but not limited to how do you identify a facility in the data warehouse? And how do you identify location information? So not only location of a facility, but location of monitor wells, soil borings, sample locations, accuracy, precision, and electronic data deliverables. An outreach plan is going to be developed for both internal and external stakeholders. And the team recommended pursuing a phased approach, starting first with prioritized data and then expanding. So once we create those standards for data input, from that point forward, put new data into the system that meets those standards. But then a phased approach is going to have to be taken to retrofit all that existing hard copy and previous electronic data that's out there right now, get that into the data warehouse. Another phased approach that was recommended is that it's not just the groundwater data that should be part of this data warehouse, but expand that to address other environmental media, so stream flow, sediment, geology data, soil vapor. And the team was very aware, in part because I was part of the project team, that the 2020 council report had a parallel recommendation for creating what was called a master environmental data warehouse, something like that. So the two there's a lot of overlap between the two projects. So they need to be very closely, they're compatible. The solutions that are proposed should be compatible and they should be very closely coordinated so we don't reinvent the wheel. Another recommendation is that we do benchmarking surveys, not only of other state and federal agencies, but other organizations. So if we've got, for example, big consulting firms that are operating across the country, what are their best practices out there right now, looking around the country, that we can adapt to Eagle's purposes? So the implementation plan we formed, the core team was split into 4 implementation teams. There's the external research team that's going to be doing that benchmarking of other agencies, state and federal, consulting firms, researchers, talking to anybody and everybody, basically. structure. So how do you create this data warehouse? What's it gonna look like? Standardization, so developing standards for what is a soil boring log, monitor well log, groundwater elevation data, stream flow, what have you, the data that's being submitted, reports, templates, what do all those look like? Trying to get some standardization. And then a training and outreach team. So I'm the chair of the training and outreach team, so the tasks that are on our plate include developing training materials both for internal users within Eagle, but also the external users. So reaching out to the consultants and other parties that are going to be submitting external data into the warehouse. But I will also we've got a lot of stakeholder groups that we need to keep in the loop. So including, but not limited to, the council here and some of the committees. And I should note that Nat Schuff is also on, I believe Nat's on the standardization and the structure. He's on the external research and the standardization team. I'm on the standardization and the training and outreach. Sarah Pearson in drinking water is the chair of our core team. We had representation from WRD, drinking water, remediation, redevelopment, material management, and oil and gas division. So pretty, as well as information management division. So we've got pretty broad representation across Eagle. So that is very closely, like I said, it's very closely related to that master environmental data warehouse recommendation of the 2020 report. So that would be going forward in the implementation strategy committee. I think that's one of the discussions that we need to have is how closely are those two going to interlap? Are you going to wait for the groundwater data warehouse to be developed and then expand upon that? Or how do we want to approach this? And there's another recommendation where there's a recommendation to have somebody do an evaluation of all the existing data and identify where are the data gaps and prioritize that. That's going to be a pretty heavy lift right now for somebody to come in because Eagle's got a lot of data that's siloed among all these different divisions. So it might be easier for somebody to come in once this data warehouse is developed, all the data is in one place, be able to do that kind of work. So that might be a recommendation that we may want to wait on. With that, are there any questions, Jim?
I'm sure you've given this thought, but what is it going to take just for the ongoing maintenance and administration of a database? And is that additional personnel or funding that's needed to do that?
Yes to both.
Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the structure team. That's one of the questions that they're going to need to be working on.
Jim?
Correct.
Jim, I was just wondering how long before you want to sit down and talk about that overlap and coordination with our recommendation? Are you there now? Another month?
Well, Brad Braddis, our information management division director, who is one of the sponsors. He would really like to have a request for proposal issued by the end of September. I think that's a very ambitious schedule. So we'll have better answers we're meeting about the teams are meeting about every 2 weeks. So we'll have additional information for the council at the September meeting and certainly the October meetings going forward. So probably be an ongoing thing, but yeah, we should start having that talk fairly soon about coordinating between the 2020 recommendations and this.
Okay. Okay.
Just got
All right,
one, Brian, if I can back up just a little bit to the SSR. And I guess just, it struck me because we do have that 10-day statutory deadline for completing those. In June, we were at 13.1 was the average days, and 51% were within that 10 days. This month, your report is better, 11.5, and it's 53. Back in June, you talked about adding staff to help get to that 10 days. Was staff added? And what might attributed to the improvement in that?
We haven't had any additional staff added. In part, I think it's workload fluctuations. We were able to turn a number of SSRs around very quickly that were either, a lot of them were like based on capacity replacements. So they were done within a day or two, which really helped the timeliness metric, but it's going to be an ongoing, you're seeing the trend starting to level off in terms of timeliness. So that's going to be an ongoing issue for some time.
So is there any measures we can do as a council to help hit that 10 days? I mean, we're really close, but what I don't want someone to do is look back in these minutes and say, for years, we've always seen that this is above council. There's a 10-day statutory requirement on this. What have you not done to help?
One thing we're currently working on is trying to get an additional staff person hired to help with some of the modeling. As you're aware, Joe Van Dyke has been on medical leave. So we're working, haven't gotten this posted yet, but we're working on establishing another position to help at least do some of the legwork to help Lena with some of those model reviews.
How many of your SSRs on average are models, numerical models?
SSR is very few. So the bulk of Lena's groundwater model reviews are in support of resource permit applications. There's maybe the Dickinson County model. We've got the ongoing work within the models committee to improve the Cass County model. And coordinating with USGS as they're starting to develop a regional groundwater model for Calhoun County, and also another regional groundwater model for Geological, which reminds me, probably have an update for the council. You probably heard about the Aquabounty proposed well fields just over the border into Ohio for an aquaculture facility. Ohio DNR issued a permit for the south well field. We're still waiting for them to put out a public notice for an additional east well field. Combined would push it up over like 5.25 MGD, with part of the capture zone extending over the border into Michigan. So Eagle reviewed the first permit application, provided comments to Ohio DNR. Once it gets put out on public notice, we're going to review the updated information, go from there. But the timing of that, probably I'll have something to update the council on for the September meeting.
All right. Thank you. I got a couple hands raised online, so I'll go in the order that they came up. Todd Feenstra, go ahead.
Jim, one of the questions that I run into a lot when I get calls from growers about SSRs, when they get the initial denial and then not denial, but the initial kind of rejection of it and the option to do the SSR, do you have numbers on how long it takes to do reviews if additional data is provided? What I'm talking about is rather than going in and just, I know the initial review is to check the other withdrawals in the area, look at rates and look at who's there, look at all the registrations that are current. But how long does it take to do a review typically if additional data is provided, like aquifer testing or stream bed characteristics or flow measurements, something along that line.
I don't know if there's such a thing as typical. I would say it would be highly variable depending on how much data and what types of data to go through. I'd be happy to talk with you further about that offline.
Thank you. I actually meant to turn my microphone on this time.
Clay, I see you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I think it was Doug that asked the question about the, comparing the June numbers or the June metrics to today's metrics. And it's kind of comparing apples to oranges because we did change the period of metrics. The last time in June, it was from July 9th to that June date. Now it's starting in January 1st. So it's kind of comparing apples to oranges. So that's why you're seeing different different trends.
Right, that's an excellent point, Clay. So at the June meeting, those metrics were from July 9th, 2021 to date. And now at the August meeting, we're doing January 1st through July 31st, 2022. So it is kind of apples and oranges.
Okay, thanks. Andy, I bet you wanted to add something too. Go ahead.
I did, yeah, real quick there. I think it's important. I know it's been raised in the council here before, but we're just gonna probably keep reiterating it. Would be wise. I think that almost the entirety of a late site specific review. The reason why site specific review goes late or past the 10-day deadline is almost entirely on response time from the applicant. Like when it's not just a review and a withdrawal that can be authorized easily. There's a back and forth. There's a communication as far as trying to adjust certain factors about their withdrawal, and the delays are almost entirely just due to that process. They're trying and get in touch with someone, trying to figure out what might work. It's almost like Clay was kind of mentioning there. It's almost, and I know Doug, you'd said the numbers got better. I would say they didn't get better. They got lower, and that is better, but they didn't just get better. The timeliness didn't just get better. It just means that we didn't have those long delays most likely on the reviews as far as trying to get back in touch with people. That's kind of where most of the length of the time comes in, and then especially like Todd had asked a question about if there's additional data or some other kind of more involved work that needs to be done. Certainly, that's gonna add lots of time to it and kind of inflate those numbers. And so it's always going to be that way, most likely, where you just can't hit 10 days all the time, or even as an average. We're really close now, but I'd be surprised if we could ever get there, just because of the lengthy reviews that will have to always occur.
Well, as a follow-up then, since we are going to be doing the 2022 report coming up here, is this a spot that we should request tweaked and changed? Metric wise, you look at this and you say, okay, for the last 2, 3 years, 4 years, you haven't hit the 10-day statutory deadline. Here we sit, we really haven't addressed it. We haven't done anything with it. It's just a number. I don't think anybody right now is complaining too much because it sounds like you are working with them back and forth. But as a reporter or as a legislator looking at this saying, well, geez, why can't you meet it? Is this something that we should tweak and ask for an adjustment or to remove that, or at least have some leniency in that you have 10 days to respond back to the applicant of additional information that's needed and give you guys a little bit of buffer?
Well, my personal opinion, I don't think the 10 business day deadline is terribly, it works for some SSRs. If you've got a very data intensive SSR or a more complicated hydrogeological setting, then 10 days, frequently, we're gonna go beyond 10 days, or if we have any kind of compliance issues that have to be resolved. You may have SSRs that are, we simply can't authorize because we gotta get violations back into compliance first. So we're not, like Andy said, we're never gonna hit 100%. The 2018 amendments were an attempt to address a backlog issue, a timeliness issue. Got my own opinions about that, which I won't don't necessarily need to get into now, but those were, the approach that was taken was giving us 20 or 25 days, business days to get it done, and if we blew that, it would be issued by operational law. Well, the outcome of all that is, I can tell you that if we get one of those things in, we're gonna drop everything, make darn sure that we hit that deadline. We've only had 4 to date. The first 2 weren't even eligible because they were over 1 MGD, the way the statute is written. The third one was administratively incomplete. They turned around, resubmitted, fixed it, resubmitted it, went the full 25 days, which required recalculating all the depletions. There still wasn't enough stream flow available in that particular water management area to authorize the withdrawal. So I'll leave it to the wisdom of the council to decide how well that experiment worked, whether any further statutory changes need to be made. If you want to ask Eagle for suggestions about further statutory changes, then yeah, let's talk offline.
All right, thank you.
Our staff will probably have to bounce that off of our legislative staff and division and department management, but we can get back with suggestions.
I think that we can.
Kelly, I saw your hand raised and then you pulled it down. I don't know if that's because you gave up because they made you wait a long time or if somebody answered your question. Do you still have one? Kelly?
Yeah, sorry about that. I was getting a spam call and it wouldn't be quiet. I think to address some of the things that we're seeing here, maybe we need to come up with the time period that we're always looking at for these timelines and compared to the same time period a year ago, right? Kind of like you do financial statements, like here's where we are today and here is how it compares to where we were a year ago. Just so that we're always comparing apples to apples per se and not apples to oranges as was discussed. And some of the things I know we're looking at trying to keep these meetings concise, but it would, as someone who's, I would say, fairly new to this committee, I would be interested in some of these discussions that keep kind of being pulled offline or, hey, let's talk offline about that. Is there a way to bring those conversations back? Because I think there really would be great educational pieces to understand the whole system and kind of what we're looking at. There are a lot of times where I feel like I don't really understand like some of the business decisions and stuff that Eagle makes. And so having those discussions brought back into the report for next time just helps me to understand like how things work and what are the roadblocks that are in the way to some of these things being done, because then we're more likely to come up with better suggestions and ways to fix it versus like this kind of throwing out ideas that may not work well. So just some suggestions.
It's a good suggestion. It's a good suggestion, Kelly. And yeah, occasional deeper dives on subjects that, again, you know, they're not committee reports. They're not worrying about the next report that we have to write up. And so remembering to spend some time on the stickier or more complicated issues is a great suggestion.
Brian, this is Dave Hamilton. To follow up on Kelly's point, some of the things that
Oh,
You hit the wrong button.
I think we lost him.
I'm glad it's not only me that's having technical difficulties today.
Oh, boy, yeah. I don't even see him.
No, I think he got cut off.
Yeah, so I'd be happy in whatever format, if you want to take a deeper dive. I don't know if that's new topics committee or a separate agenda item in a future council meeting.
Yeah, probably a separate agenda item in a future council meeting. And this is, I'll make a note of this. I mean, just the subject of those timelines is a great one, and it is complex because they were important to people, but they were also kind of a guesstimate at the beginning of this before people had 13 years of actually going through complex, piles of reviews, and it's tied into money, right? Like more money can make things sometimes go quicker, sometimes not, but is it worth them? Can you get the extra money? It's an important subject. So we'll do a little discussion and figure out if this might just be a nice standalone, good discussion to have at a future full council meeting. I had one minor question way back on, I think, like you don't have to go back to it, but like your slide 22 or 23, you had like 4 complaints, and you went past it pretty quick. And just a high level question: when you say complaints, is that people calling you complaining about somebody else's water withdrawal, complaints about people registering into the system about your performance, or was it used in the technical term of you had violations and you were actually filing complaints as a legal procedure? What do you mean by complaints?
Okay, by complaints, we mean somebody contacted us with a complaint alleging a violation of Part 327. So maybe it might be alleging, for example, an unregistered withdrawal. It might be a complaint, might be somebody that's a lake owner noticing that the level on their lake dropped and that there's irrigation systems in the area, and they're concerned about the irrigation systems being the cause of the lake drop. Might be multiple factors involved, so step on.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Jim. So those are complaints that you receive that you have to do some due diligence to just try to assess and figure out whether there's anything to them or not. In your escalation of enforcement there, ending with complaints, I thought that you had maybe filed 4 complaints to like a judge for non-compliance. Okay, thank you.
Anything else you want to add about complaints?
No, I guess maybe just that we have been like doing a lot more of going out and like going and talking to the people that are complaining in person. To see like the lake level drops and things like that, and then talking with the farmers that are the suspect farmers in the complaint. So we've been doing a little bit more like one-on-one outreach with these people, but it is something we're working on.
And that's one of the benefits of having additional staff added to the program, is that we're able to have a greater field presence, not only for following up on complaints and doing compliance checks, but freeing up time to get having more staff available to go out and do stream flow measurements, for example, or meeting with a property owner. We had a meeting, Laura joined us, Farm Bureau joined us with the property owner and with Buddy to try to come up with a solution for a rather complicated irrigation system.
This was a new experience for him. This was a mostly retired farmer in his 90s who was just finding out that there's water use regulations in Michigan. So it was a tough conversation, but you guys did a good job.
The upshot of it all was that he has a well that taps a confined aquifer flowing well, with the overflow going to an excavated pond. It's got to drain out to the watershed there. So trying to figure out, okay, is at least 50% of the flow to his irrigation system coming from that confined aquifer, or how much is coming from the pond? So it was very helpful for us to be able to go out on site, meet with the property owner, have Farm Bureau and have Buddy, the well driller, out there and kick around some ideas.
Great, thank you. Anybody else have questions on the Eagle update? I don't see hands raised in the room. And I don't see hands raised online. So I think we may be done with that. Thank you for a very good update. A lot of good, really good stuff and good discussion fodder. The next agenda item is just kind of reviewing the basics of our future meetings, September 13th, October 11th, November 10th, and then December 5th. So the next 3 months in a row are probably where a lot of business needs to get done, and it becomes more and more critical to try to achieve in-person quorums so we can get consensus official and come across the finish line with our report. I know that's always difficult for a variety of reasons, as I'm not there with you today. I had a surprise pop up. I understand that. Let's keep working to try to get some quorums, especially for the next 3 months, as much as possible, and letting people know if you're coming and in person or not. Yeah, I think we just got an important couple of months in front of us. So those are the future meetings. Any other comments about future meetings? Okay. Still not seeing any. So, all right. So agenda item number 13 is just an opportunity for anybody to make open comments. We kind of keep them to 3 minutes. So we're not here for 45 minutes on a new thread, which we should have, probably added to the agenda as a new item. But, this can be on anything, anybody's mind about kind of anything water related. Anybody would like to share any open comments? Okay, I see Todd Feenstra raised his hand. Go ahead, Todd.
Thanks. I'll try to keep this really short. I just had some questions that generated from a site-specific review we've been working on with Veggies. And Jim had mentioned it. It's one of the ones that they're working on with the Zone D status. Eagle had gone out and done some measurements on the stream. We went back out a month later in July and did that at the request of the grower. He asked me to bring it up today in the meeting. The drain has 3 different branches, a west branch, a north branch, and an east branch. I do have a slide here that shows it all if that helps, if you want me to share the screen. Otherwise, I can just talk through it. But what we found out there was when we looked at the west branch, at every crossing, it was dry. So we went and looked at the north branch. All of the water that was in the north branch was 70 degrees or higher in temperature. And we also discovered that the north branch was fed by field tiles on sump pumps. And so the stream was surging because it wasn't being groundwater fed. It was fed from those field tiles. And then we looked at the east branch, and east branch had no flow in it as well. So the questions that come up for me are, we looked at the perennial determination sheets that Eagle staff did when they went out, and they used the aquatic biologists, and they went out and looked at it. But a couple of the questions that I kind of have are bigger questions maybe for the committee. How are we, and what is the definition of a perennial stream? If we go out and we identify that there's no water in it, and we've got photos and everything else, is that still considered a perennial stream? What are the temperatures for the water? I mean, if we've got 70-degree water that we measured with the flow tracker while we're out there, that's definitely not groundwater fed based on our experience in the fields. One of the questions that comes up too is there a lower limit to what streams we're looking at? Meaning, the Qs that we measured, even in the one that was supplied by the field drains, were under, it was like the maximum Q was 0.37 cubic feet per second. That is a really, really low flowing stream. Are these the ones that we're focused on? Or, is there a way for us to delineate between what would be a groundwater stream, say a headwaters up in, Traverse City somewhere, or Wexford County, versus something like this where we've got what's basically a surface drain? with surface water temperatures to it, it's clearly being fed by drain tiles. And so is there a way to kind of clean some of this up? I know the intent is to protect these cold water streams, but I think some clarity would be helpful here. If we were to eliminate the west branch because there's no water in it, we almost could eliminate the north branch because it's not, it could be considered perennial, but it is being filled by drain tiles, but it should be reclassified, not as a cold water stream with temperatures that are in the 70s. So it seems like there's confusion on my end for sure. It's difficult to relate to the farmer and explain what we found and try to explain how that still fits into the tool here. So I guess the 4 questions that I write down to make it simple are, how are we defining a perennial stream? Does it have to have flow in it year round or not? What are we doing with water temperatures? If we measure them in July and they're in their 70s, is that a big deal? Do we really want to look at streams that have this low of flow in them? I mean, the water was only 2 inches deep, 1 inch deep or less in a lot of the segments we looked at. And the third one is, or the 4th question is, we're looking at wells that are 250 foot deep. We're looking at streams that are, or intermittent or whatever you want to call them, that are, 11,000 feet away with this kind of low flow in warm temperatures. How do we work through some of this stuff? Are those some of the questions that the council should be helping with, or it would be good to clarify a lot of that? There's a lot of communication issues, it seems like, for me, as I try to communicate some of this stuff to the farmers. So I think my 3 minutes are probably way up by now.
No, it's good. Thank you, Todd. I will say that this just deserves some good follow-up and some time to think through how to structure a good conversation. You hit on a bunch of things. Some of them are, the statutory background and the definitions. Some of them are more theoretical ones. If a stream's receiving a bunch of drain tile water, if not for the drain tile, shouldn't that be groundwater recharge? So some of it might just be more philosophical. But I also do remember that quite a few years ago at one of our meetings, I think in St. John's at maybe AgriGrow, I think we had Mike Walterhouse from Eagle, I think who's now retired, did give us an overview of the perennial stream assessment protocols that Eagle has. And I'm saying that out loud, and I think that's probably quite a few years ago. So maybe we could, take a look at that again. So I think you hit on quite a few topics to unpack. And with your help, we can probably try to talk those out a little bit more and figure out how to structure that into a conversation, a lot like maybe the site-specific review processing time one, and kind of have that come back up in a robust way.
I appreciate the responses, and it's, as we continue to get more and more wells go in, we're going to continue to have less and less water, available water, according to the tool. And these questions I'm encountering them much more frequently now with growers, much more frequently. So timing is probably a pretty important one to put on new topics or whatever, but some of these I think are definitely worth discussing.
Brian?
All right, thank you. Is somebody in the room have one? Because I see Kelly's hand up.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Kelly. I'll wait.
Oh, I was just gonna say, basically what Brian said, this is a great point, I think, to bring back for education, right? And for us to discuss at the Water Use Advisory Council. I had a little bit of a flashback, I think, as Todd was talking, to a time when I worked at Farm Bureau, and we had very similar discussions in a field, in a farmer's field with MDARD and the group that was now called Eagle, formerly known as DEQ, on this very topic. So and I think at that time, the farmer really was looking at, okay, how do I get this into court, right? So I feel like this is really something that is needs to be discussed kind of here on, I'll call it home turf, right? So that we can all be on the same page, so that we can provide guidance. If there are some some ways in which the regulations are being applied that aren't practical, or, you know, there's some guesswork involved in them. So definitely feel like bringing this back for discussion is going to be worth it for all of us in the end, so that we're all on the same page. Because then that way, if a farmer has questions, then being able to relay the Water Use Advisory Council's perspective on these things, I think holds a lot of weight. And it can go to help Eagle with some determinations, or it could also go to help Eagle kind of understand the farmers understand where Eagle is applying these regulations and why they're in existence. So good stuff.
Thank you, Kelly. Chris, is that you that wanted to make a comment?
Yes, it is. Thanks, Brian. I was just gonna say that this would be a good conversation for us to maybe take a deeper dive in. We have a whole group of staff who do this kind of work outside of the council. They're implementing other regulations and laws for us. And Todd, I will say, we have a lot of very, very low flow streams. We protect surface waters with flows. Their low flows can be 0. We protect those as surface waters of the state of Michigan. So the 0.1, 0.3 cubic feet per second are streams that we routinely protect in the state of Michigan. We do have very, very warm streams, 70 degrees. Jay, you can correct me, but in my field biologist days, in July and August on a small stream that wasn't shaded, we have stream temperatures much higher than 70 degrees. So Jay, I can't see you, but you can shake your head and tell me no. But
Yeah, I would call 70 in July and August still pretty cool or cold.
I would too, being hot in winters in a stream. So I just wanted to share that perspective as well. So good conversations. We can bring some folks in. And Brian, yes, it was Mike Walterhouse. I'm sure he presented the perennial stream protocol that we implement. So, and just wanted to share some of those thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian, this is Dave Hamilton. I got cut off last time. It sounds like this is essentially the same idea, that I think that some of these things we might want to have a committee work on some of this. It seems like some of it needs some back and forth to really dig into it and understand it, and then come back to the council with kind of a presentation that kind of summarizes this is where we're at. But these seem like really good topics, and they probably should be dug into.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments anybody would like to make? Okay, not seeing any. So I guess this is that somewhat awkward thing where I should ask for a motion to adjourn in a second, and all in favor, except I understand we don't have a quorum. So we are just adjourned.
Brian, I'm sorry, one more thing Laura was asking. There were some questions about our roster, and I found it.
Oh, good.
I did find the roster. I found the representing or the appointing authority. So I have that. So Laura, I'll give that to you. And there were just a couple of things I noticed. We are missing some affiliations in here. And Rachel, you are with consumers, correct? Is Jason Walt here still?
Yep, Jason Walther, so he's representing agricultural irrigators. He's with Walther Farms. Kelly is his backup, and so has been mostly attending on his behalf.
Okay, there's just, when you share this, if folks could provide those updates, we have 4 or 5 blanks on the organizations that people are representing. So if you wonder why, I guess when we developed this, we didn't know. So just wanted to clarify, but yeah, we do have the appointing authorities.
Yep, I've got the appointing authorities, and what I don't know is getting back to this question on the dates that people were appointed and whether or not that affects their term end date, or whether everybody ends in December. So I've got maybe follow up with you and check with,
We'll
check
take
with
we'll take a
legal
look
and
at that.
see, you know.
There was the first meeting that I don't know, some of you were at that very first meeting when Diane Clements was still here. It was her last meeting. I think maybe we can go back there and try to figure out when the appointments came in.
Okay, okay.
Anyway, so sorry to delay.
Yep, so to follow up on that, I know I had said I will, as quickly as possible, get you guys out the staff contact information for your appointing authority, so I'll get those out to you guys, but then as soon as we can figure it out, we'll answer the question about appointment dates and term end dates.
Yep. And if, I think to follow up on Chris's with helping us clean up the roster, kind of going into the end of our appointments. I believe Sherry had that as the roster as an attachment to the notice for this meeting. So if everybody could kind of take a look at that and correct their names, alternates, affiliations, and send any updates that you think are needed to that, to, Christine Spitzley, that would be great. All right. So again, in the spirit, at least, even if unofficial, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, that sounds like a great consensus. Thank you, everybody. Be safe, and we'll see you in no time at all for the next meeting.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, the report.